Ready?
Water is life.
Water is universal. It is the source and birthplace of life on this planet, the element that sustains us. Water nourishes. Water cleanses. Water wears away stone. Water builds up a shoreline only to wash it away again.
Our bodies are substantially made up of water. The continents of this planet are joined and divided by oceans. Our land masses are cross-cut by tiny streams and giant rivers.
All water shares an eternal, unchanging form of two molecules of hydrogen bonded to one of oxygen. But water takes myriad forms, streaming as rain, drifting as snow, hardening as ice. Water fits itself into the tiny cracks of a rock face, and it roars with the power of a monsoon in flood. It falls from the sky, flows across the land, and evaporates into clouds only to fall again as rain. In this ceremony, water symbolizes the eternal and ever-renewing power of life.
And so water symbolizes our journey and our return, as each year we come together at summer's end, together again as one community. Infants and sages, and all ages in between, we celebrate our coming together, our ingathering, with the ritual of mingling the waters representing our individual experiences.
We come to a new program year, beginning afresh as we flow like smaller streams, bringing our gifts and our uniqueness into the great river of beloved community. From the many joining as one, we celebrate the strength, love, and joy we find together.
Gathered in this lovely place, we create a ritual that conveys our sense of connection and relationship. Whoever we are, wherever we come from, we belong to one another. What affects one of us affects us all.
Some of us are coming to this liberal community of faith for the first time today, others of us for the 100th or 1,000th time. The hot and dusty winds of summer have blown us about, but today we gather again, seeking what we need to live out our values here in the world.
Today, as we gather for our water communion, we will reflect on the many aspects of water. Water is life, water is justice, and water is community. As we think symbolically about water, we will also think practically about water. How it impacts our lives, our values, who gets water and how. Our wish is that we will celebrate our coming together with water, but also leave with a deeper appreciation of how water is part of our lives in a much deeper level.
Water is life. So welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. Welcome to our annual water communion. Welcome to our new program year. I am the Reverend Christine Dance, and I am honored to be serving as your newly called minister. And it's about you. And I am even more honored to be leading this service with our amazing staff. We have our music director, Benjie Messer. We have our congregational administrator, Lora Gustafson, and our director of children's ministries, Katie Resendiz. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix is a spiritual community with a vision of radical inclusion and a mission to advance justice in the world. And you are welcome here. Our faith celebrates the wisdom we find from all of the world's traditions, as well as from science and reason. We are committed to undoing systems of oppression and uplifting movements for collective liberation. We are a people of many beliefs and backgrounds. We are people of diverse races, abilities, classes, gender identity, and sexual orientation. And you are welcome here. You and your family and your full self is welcome here. Here we seek to build a beloved community of kindness and courage, of joy and generosity, a beloved community together. Greetings, all my relations. In coming together for the beginning of our year, we remember the beginnings of this land and its original inhabitants. As part of our journey together, we bring into consciousness the idea that the earth beneath our feet is ancestral land of indigenous peoples, going back countless generations. We give thanks to the spirits of this land and the water that runs through it. We acknowledge the desert and the river Otham people, the people of Pima, and the people of Maricopa. We recognize and aspire to follow the ongoing example set by indigenous people of a sacred relationship with the land and the water that encompasses an understanding of our responsibility to all living things. Water is justice.
We know that we live in a desert where water is a precious commodity.
We know that we live in a state where people have been prosecuted for distributing water.
We know we live in an economy that bottles up water from native lands and puts it in plastic bottles and sells it.
We know we live in a world where millions of people do not have access to clean water. Today, we are sharing our water. We are sharing our water with each other, and we will be sharing it with the land after our service. And I think it's important to think broadly about how we share our water and how that can be an act of justice. So as soon as Karen and I knew we were moving here, of course, we needed to start following the news, right? So we started looking at the newspaper, going online for news about Phoenix and Arizona. And if you all remember, that was late spring, early summer of this year, and a lot of what was in the news was the story of Scott Warren. So Scott Warren was somebody who showed up as a person, he was prosecuted for providing aid to migrants. Before I even considered moving to Phoenix, I was actually very inspired by the creative act of resistance that the Unitarian Universalist Association organized called Faith Floods the Desert. I remember hearing about all of the religious leaders who showed up in support of no more deaths, no más muertes, and who for years have been walking along the trails of the harsh Arizona desert, placing out water for migrants in the midst of their dangerous journey. It was an act of sharing water, recognizing our common humanity and our need for water in support of them on their harrowing journey. For these simple acts of humanity, 9 of these human rights defenders were recently charged with federal misdemeanors. One of No More Deaths volunteer, Scott Warren, was charged with 3 different felonies just for providing life-saving assistance to migrants. And as many of you know, his first trial was an undecided decision. It continues. The life-saving labors of volunteers with No More Deaths have been inspired by the stark, shocking fact that hundreds of human beings don't make it across the border because of their lack of water. Scott Warren himself has asked, "What would you do if people were dying in your backyard?" The answer for most of us is that we would do what we could to help them. As No More Deaths places water in the desert, risking arrest, their message is simple and clear. Humanitarian aid is never a crime. We share our water. The UU Service Committee uses a line that I love. Our faith that says that every declaration of truth comes with a therefore clause attached. No person is disposable. Therefore, we must act to preserve the life, safety, and well-being of people who are at risk. Therefore, we need to share our water with them, physically and metaphorically. When desperate adults and children flee into the desert in order to escape the dangers at home, our faith calls us to respond. When our government tries to repress and threaten humanitarian aid, our faith calls us to show up for those who offer it. And when our neighbors are dying from trying to cross into safer territory, we give them that which nurtures life, water. The other thing I needed to learn about is where our water comes from. So we moved from Florida, and in Florida, the water is in the aquifers right below your feet. You tap into the waters, there's natural springs. You know where the water comes from, it's right under you. But here in the desert, it's different, isn't it? So I was not aware to the extent that Arizona depends on our neighbors sharing their water with us. As we acknowledged in the beginning of our service, we live on native land, and the sacred water that runs through it is not rightfully ours. And yet, we have created treaties that allocate the sacred resource of water. And that water, the amount of it, is decreasing. I've learned that the water we get right here in Arizona comes from the Colorado River. And there was a treaty from 1922 that outlines how we share it with 7 other states. And basically, well, Arizona, California, and Nevada have taken up more than our fair share. The upper basin states, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico, are legally roped into sending more water downstream for us. The cuts, there actually is going to be, in starting on January 1st, Arizona will see a 7% reduction of the Colorado River water. The cuts are a plan to keep Lake Mead, the reservoir for our water, functional, since the water levels are decreasing significantly as a result of overuse and drought related to climate change. So the water does not belong to us. We share our water. And due to the environmental crisis, we need to be always more conscious of how we are sharing. This can lead us to think differently about conservation and gratitude for our water differently. Our water is sacred. It is limited. It is shared. Our usage impacts others. As we prepare to share our water with each other, I encourage you to think about all of the ways that we share water in a larger context. How we share it within our homes, our communities, our states, our nation, and the wider world. So might it be.
We will not let the act of providing water to our fellow human beings be criminalized.
We will not forget the sacred role of water to those who were here long before this land was colonized.
We will not take for granted the limited resource of water.
And we will not forget that we are all connected and that sharing our water is not just a ritual for today, but an act that connects us with all of creation and all of our fellow beings and creatures on this land and beyond. Water is justice. For those of you who brought water, I ask for you to put it in your hands. For those of you who didn't bring water, or those of you who didn't even know that that was supposed to be a thing, there is plenty of water here. Some of it should be within sight of everyone. And I invite you to put your hands out or in your lap and send energy to the water that is around us. And I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Find yourself connecting with the molecules of your water and with the water that is so much a percentage of our body. Connect the water that is in your hands to the water that flows in our rivers, rains from our clouds, is stored in our reservoirs, flows in our oceans, comes out of our kitchen sinks, fills our pools. Now I ask you to imagine that this water that is in your hands or on these podiums is all that you had. How would you think differently about your water if it was all that you had? If your life depended on it? Would you have more gratitude for it? Would you use it more sparingly? Would you fear it? Would you share it? I encourage you to take a few minutes to treasure the water in your hands as if it was all you had. We give thanks for this symbolic water. We give thanks for all of the water in our life. May we always treat it with reverence and respect, and always, always with gratitude for its life-giving element.
Water is community. We have been on journeys this summer, all different kinds of journeys, physical and mental, emotional and spiritual. Our summer journeys bring different meanings into our lives.
For some, our experiences may have given us respite from our hectic and busy lives, leaving us feel rested and renewed, ready to face the rest of the year with energy and a sense of hope and optimism.
For some of us, our experience have brought us times of gladness and elation, experiences that have lifted our hearts, widened our perspective, and brought us closer with those who we love.
For some, our experiences have brought us grief and sadness and have broken our hearts. These stormy experiences of loss and pain have prompted us to shed countless tears.
For some, our experiences have brought change and transition into our lives, in our families, in our work, in our relationships. We felt disruption and discomfort. We may now see ourselves differently. We may now see the world differently.
There are sharing spaces set up all around the sanctuary. So I invite you now to rise and move as you are able, either bringing the water that has come here with you or that you got before service, or you can pick some water from the tables that you see set around you.
This ceremony of water communion is symbolic, and the water we bring to the common pool symbolizes the joining of all of our individual experiences as merging streams. As you pour the water into the common pitchers, you may share with each other at your stations about your water. Feel free to share words about your experiences of renewal, of joy, of grief, or of change. Or silently pour your water into our collective stream, honoring the journey of your own heart. If you have celebrated this ritual in the past, please help all of the rest of us who have not done it with you.
Let us join our waters and be together in the spirit of community, remembering our summer journeys and beginning a new cycle together.
Water is community. Blessings. Blessings for this community and for a new year, for new ministry together, for amazing work. Blessings. Blessings for those who do not have as much, for those who are afraid of losing their water, those who are not thriving because they do not have water. Blessings. For all of those who have been before us, all of those who may join this community. Blessings to all of us. Blessings. Let the new year be